Cars ready for the start of the Royal Automobile Club Historic Tourist Trophy. 50-minute race for these fabulous 1966 GT racers. Cobras to the fore. Will the E-Types and the rest of them be able to snatch victory away? Minutes of GT racing, 60 style is underway with the Royal Automobile Trophy Royal Automobile Club's Tourist Trophy, and car number 300, the all-red 289 Cobra. John Spears starting, Nigel Greensall will drive later. This is a two-driver race already, car across the grass. That's one of the E-Types. Manages to recover its composure there. I think that was the, wasn't the Pearson's car, was that the Richard Cook?
Jason Minshaw, I think
Jason Minshaw, yeah. Okay, the Minshaw family car. And the pale E-Type's already got marks down the side, tyre marks on the side of car number 33. That's the Jack and Guy Minshaw car. So 59 is the third of our Cobras on the grid. That's the white car with the black roof, the car of Richard Cook. He's behind the Pearson's white Jaguar E-Type, that also with a black roof. But it is Cobras at the front, and it's Gregor Fiskin who has taken the lead. The red Cobra with the white roof and the enormous number 68. And right back in front of him has gone John Spears. So Fiskin went down the inside into Brooklands, and Spears came round the outside to retake it. Austin Healey, Big Healey's battling away there with the tail of the pack of E-Types and that white and black Cobra of Richard Cook. Beg your pardon, Richard Cook.
Lovely to see those three E-Types there battling for third place. The two Cobras out front, and it's the Minshaw car which leads the group. Now, car number 33, that's been started by Jack Minshaw, who's John's son and nephew of the second driver in that car, John's brother Guy. So very much a family affair in that car. And that's the soft top E-Type, the similar soft top white E-Type of Gary Pearson, who will hand over to brother John next behind him in fifth place. And then it's the second of the Minshaw cars, that's Jason Minshaw driving Martin Melling's car. Martin will do the second stint, that's the number 55 one, so three E-Types there.
Top of the screen, the white Cobra and the black E-Type 711. 711 is Howard Spooner, well, dark green, and again, change for the lead, John Spears. Gregor Fiskin got alongside down the straight, but John Spears just keeps his nose in front. Again, had a front-ending victory in his Maserati 250F against all the mid-engined pre-66 Formula One cars yesterday in the wet. But this is very much different conditions. Dry track here. And he's just keeping his nose in front of Gregor Fiskin. Comedy, not going to get any clear air off the back of Gregor. I'm not going to get clear air off many of these cars here. Particularly the Cobras, not the world's most aerodynamic things. What they lacked in aerodynamics, they certainly made up for in brute force. And as we heard from John, the pretty narrow wheel arch, original 289, the small block Ford Cobras rather than the big block Cobra Jet 427s, very much in vogue now. Those are kind of FIA Appendix K type cars. They're very much more period looking against these Jaguar E-Types, but the E-Types go well in the corners, but they do lose out in a straight, so it's going to be hard work for the Pearsons and the Minshaws and everybody else in the E's to try and match the pace of the front-running Cobras.
And in fact, the third place has been taken over by the E-Type of Gary Pearson, who starts in that team, and so into third place, fourth place there for Jack Minshaw, and then still in fifth place is Jason Minshaw, who is Jack's other uncle.
And for those of you close to the track or watching the big screens, Howard Spooner in 6th or 7th place, wherever he is now, in that dark 711 E-Type, has got the advantage of white gloves, which really show the driver working hard. And again here, challenge for the lead. Gregor Fiskin just eases his way, creeps in front at Copse, but now they go over the brow, left into Beckett's, and he has got his nose in front. So it's Gregor Fiskin who leads from John Spears. The white E-Type in third, Gary Pearson starting that.
And he's closing in on the Cobras, isn't he? Suddenly,
well, the more they fight,
yes,
the better chance the E-types have. But it does mean the E-types can't afford to squabble between themselves. You're absolutely right. Now he's in the tow, and a Cobra does give a sizable tow. Gregor Fiskin, though, historic car dealer and modern car racer, has raced for several seasons in British GT and Porsches and the like. He's galloping away. Here's the all Austin Healey battle behind, the big Healey 3000s. Joe Wilmot, Michael Russell. So Joe Wilmot in car number 81, 168 Michael Russell. They started nose to tail on the grid, but in the reverse order from how they are currently. And the white E-type, the Pearson family E-type, Gary all over the back of John Spears. And if he has ambitions to try and win this race ahead of the Cobras, he needs to get ahead of Spears now. He's looking to go the long way around the outside. Ooh, now can he get back down the inside? I think he will. John Spears daren't really slam the door because that's going to be expensive contact and he will end up getting spun out. Gary Pearson didn't quite get there. Spears there chasing the throttle. You see the car rotating rapidly as he gets onto the gas, out of the loop and into Village, and then onto the Wellington straight. He's just got a car length or so over the third placed E-type, and Gregor Fiskin continues to creep away in front.
To remember, this is a 50-minute race for these cars, and they're not youngsters, are they? So between the 50s and early 60s.
Bit rude. Oh, you mean the cars?
Yes.
Sorry, yes, sorry.
And they've got to last for 50 minutes with a mandatory pit stop, which will let you know when the pit window opens in about 10 minutes, no, slightly less minutes time, 8 minutes time. And that will see the cars come in. One other rule that is in this series is that the owner of the car has to do at least 50% of the race. So that takes away the benefit of perhaps having a really quick driver in with you and you put them in for the most part of the race. You can't do that in this one, which levels things up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing there is that as the owner of the car, you know that for half the race you'll be racing with your peers rather than against Le Mans winners or ex-Grand Prix drivers or professional racing drivers from wherever they come. So that's quite a handy rule for the drivers themselves. What you don't want is to be an owner driver swamped by dozens and dozens of pro drivers. Now, the owner doesn't have to start the car, so you might end up against some pros, but predominantly here you've got owner drivers at the front of the field. John Spears, for instance, just ahead here of Gary Pearson. And Pearson still can't get through. Gregor Fiskin has got a margin, but it wasn't huge. At the end of the last lap, 0.8 seconds. And in fact, Gary Pearson with the fastest race lap. Fiskin is fastest in sector 1, Spears fastest in sector 2, Pearson fastest in sector 3, but the gap is now out to 1.7 seconds. So this battle for second place, 300 John Spears, the all-red Cobra, and the white E-type behind of Gary Pearson. Because they're battling each other, they're not going as quickly as they would do on their own. Gregor Fiskin, with no worries in his mirror, can concentrate on trying to take the perfect racing line and squeeze the most speed out of his Cobra, the one with the white roof.
And Gary Pearson going for the tight line through the loop, and I think he may get through here because
well, John Spears going for the very wide line. He headed off into Oxfordshire by mistake there.
A mistake from John Spears. So up into second place goes Gary Pearson in the first of the E-types.
Right, now 1.724. Let's make a note of that and see what the margin is at the end of this lap, and we will see then whether Gary Pearson is going to close quickly or slowly on our race leader Gregor Fiskin.
He's now zeroing in, is Gary Pearson, on the leading car, and indeed the second of the E-types zeroing in on the third placed now Cobra of John Spears, and that second E-type being driven by Jack Minshaw, number 33. Both these first two E-types, the soft tops, but they do have the roofs up because it's more aerodynamic with the roof up than down.
And of course you're allowed to do that in motor racing. The normal rule of the road is that unless it's an absolute monsoon, you must have the roof down. There's no point in having a soft top otherwise. policeman will stop you if you've got your roof up, or should. So yeah, the E-types are starting to look strong. The Minshaw and Melling car, car number 55, in 5th place. Then Howard Spooner in 7-11 in 6th with the twirly white gloves. But here comes our race leader. And ahead of Gregor Fiskin, he can already see traffic. And very pretty traffic it is, because it's a Sunbeam Alpine. So the Alpine, not a particularly well-known sports car racing machine, but it's a pretty enough car, and why wouldn't you? But it might present a bit of a problem for Gregor Fiskin if he catches it in the wrong place. He's just gone by it at the end of the Vale. So that sort of turquoise, greeny blue, duckhead blue, is it? Probably not quite, something like that. Anyway, let's see how Gary Pearson deals with him. Well, he goes the long way around the outside. It was 1.7, it's now 3.6 seconds. The gap from Gregor Fiskin to Gary Pearson, first to second. And Minshaw,
but
the
Minshaw's
Minshaw E-type, a quarter of a second behind the 3rd place all red Cobra at the line. So not even a quarter, well, just barely a quarter of a second, not even a third of a second. The gap looks a little larger, and still 33. Probably not on the crowd side for most of the laps. Still got those rubber tyre marks. I'm not quite sure which other E-type it sort of collided with as it came across the grass.
I think that was Jason Minshaw. At the start, Jason got a bit out of line and went across the grass.
That's proper blue on blue action, isn't it? Minshaw on Minshaw.
Yes. What are you doing, Uncle Jason?
Yeah, that'll be a family conversation later. And there is the Jason Minshaw driven car. So Gary Pearson in 2nd place, last lap 2:31.4, but 2:31.0 for Gregor Fiskin, the race leader. I beg your pardon, 2:33.1 for Pearson, 2:31.5 for Fiskin. So is Pearson going to be able to close? Well, the quickest top speed at the moment at the end of the Formula 1 straight, 128 miles an hour, 128.5 from John Spears Cobra. Here's the battle just behind. Patrick Blakeney-Edwards ahead now of Howard Spooner. Spooner dialing on the lock, dialing it off, dialing it on again in Kopp's corner. So car number 11 moving up the order. In fact, it wasn't Pat Blakeney-Edwards that started. It was Mike Grant-Peterkin that started car number 11. And that car coming up from 9th place to where it is now in 7th position. So had a conservative start, which in this field is probably not a bad idea. Avoid hitting anything in the opening couple of laps and you've got a lot more chance. And he is starting to close on the white Cobra in front of Richard Cook, the white car with the black roof, car number 59.
And we did mention this yesterday, but it's great to see these cars coming down into Stowe Corner with the number plates still on the cars as they would have been in period. A lot of them would have been driven to the circuit. I don't think that happens at this meeting anymore, but certainly in the 50s and 60s, quite normal to drive your car to the circuit, take out the picnic hamper, put your numbers on the side and go racing.
And of course all of these now tax and MOT exempt, so you could drive it to the circuit as long as it had legal tyres on it and your indicators and your lights worked and your handbrake. So it is, I mean, they are certainly very road drivable cars, perhaps a little more exciting in the rain of yesterday than some other vehicles, but yeah, definitely the case. So Jaguars from just up the road, Jaguars competition department based at the factory at Browns Lane in Coventry, and these two of course came from Cape Road in Warwick, right by the canal, Donald Healy's works, which is still in operation. The Cape Works at Warwick, the home of JME, the Healy specialists. John Everard's company took over Cape Works not long after he started working on Healy's, and they still work there. So if you're at the Cape of Good Hope in Warwick, right behind you are always serried ranks of big and small Healy's, predominantly 3000s, it has to be said. Don't see many Jensen Healy's there. But the Browns Lane, a former Browns Lane factory, is now largely a housing estate in Coventry. Jaguar moved to the JLR premises at Gaydon, next to where Aston Martin is now based, and still building cars in Warwickshire. And of course the Jaguar Heritage operation on the site of the former Peugeot works at Ryton on Dunsmore. So very local car manufacture. Coventry and Birmingham, massive centre of industry and car manufacture in the UK right from the earliest days.
Two of the big Healey's there battling hard into Beckett's, and that's for 9th and 10th places.
Yeah, Michael Russell was behind Joe Wilmot on the grid and his inches in front of him in the race. They battle for 9th and 10th, and here, oh, is there going to be more Minshaw on Minshaw action? It's a little cleaner this time. Jason Minshaw goes around the outside of Jack Minshaw, but carries a little too much speed into Stowe. So Jack's got his nose in front, but he's not going to close the door, is he? Jason throws it up the inside. What happened to the car in front? Did it just evaporate? No, it stayed out of the way. And watching the E-Types in its mirrors, what was that? That was an Elite, wasn't it? So 275, that's the Lotus Elite of Benjamin Tarlow. A 1216cc Coventry Climax engine in that Elite. So Jason Minshaw squeezing his way by Jack, and that is a change for 4th position. Again, you can see the two different E-Type bodies. 33, that is the drop head coupe, the Roadster, and 55, the fixed head coupe. And in terms of racing, obviously a little more aerodynamic, that long sloping back, and of course one of the first hatchbacks, it had that opening rear window for your luggage. Nominally a 2+2, as long as the two were either under primary school age or dolls of some kind. There wasn't a lot of rear legroom, particularly if you had a taller driver in. There's another little Elite, primrose yellow with a white roof. And the leader is in the pit. No, the leader's not in the pits, but in has come John Spears. So that car now in the invitational class, not in the same category, but the leader is in. Gregor Fiskian has come in, so we didn't see that. We saw John Spears go in, but the leader is in the pits, and that means that Gary Pearson in the white E-Type leads. So here is our new race leader. Somebody with a better knowledge of registrations could probably tell me where that came from. Just in front, by the way, an Austin Healey Sprite. Not an average Austin Healey Sprite, but a genuine X-Works Austin Healey Sebring Sprite, as raced in the Sebring 12 Hours. And that particular car, we understand, driven in period at Sebring by Sir Sterling Moss. So, you know, it's not the quickest car in the race. It's not going to be on the top of the podium. But what a car to own and race. A car that was raced in period for the factory by Sterling Moss. What a great thing.
And the Healey battle continues. The Austin Healey Sebring Sprite you're talking about, that little engine in that one, the rather larger engine in these two big Healeys, as 68, the leader, won't be the leader on the road anymore because the pit stop's now starting to take place, but they are back out onto the track again. That's that'll now be Chris Ward. And
of course, a common factor between the big Healeys and the Healey Sprite is they both used Austin engines. The original big Healey, the 104, used a 4-cylinder Austin engine. The 3000s there, the 6-cylinder engine, which was also Austin derived. It would have been in the Austin Princess and so on. And the A-series engine, which was a BMC Austin Morris engine used in the Minis, in the Minors, and the Austin 1100s, 1300s. That was in the Healey Sprite and the MG Midget. And in fact, that Sebring Sprite, originally a 1275 engine, bored out now to 1380. So the only non-Siamese capacity you can get before you start to overlap the bores. And with his anorak firmly zipped up.
Joe Wilmot finally found a way past Michael Russell, and if you were watching on the live stream, you could see Michael looking to his right, just checking where Joe was. He didn't want to come together. We've got that shot being replayed for us now. Both sideways almost came together, and then as they came up the Hamilton straight, the driver on the right of the screen just looking across, and now they're passing a very pretty primrose and over white, or white over primrose, Lotus Elite. in a completely different class, that with the 1.2 litre Coventry Climax engine up front.
Yeah, and you know, all of these owners pay for their own racing, obviously. Some of them will work on their own cars, many of them will have professionals to help them prepare the cars, but it comes out of your own budget. And apart from anything else, apart from not wanting to damage your own car, over all of that, you don't want to damage somebody else's car, because this is a friendly racing paddock. Okay, it's, you know, all action on the grid and adrenaline pumping racing, but what you don't want is to be the guy that damages somebody else's pride and joy. You'd be more mortified about that than the damage to your own car. Again, look, there's a battle of types. We've seen a couple of elites on their own. There's a little battle between two elites. The leader is catching them. Driver change now from Gregor Fistin to Chris Ward. Well, Chris Ward's already had one podium this morning, so is he going to get a chance of a top step this before lunch? It'll be a very successful morning here at Silverstone.
And the other leading Cobra, that of John Spears, Nigel Greensall, also has done its pit stop, so that will now be our old friend Nigel Greensall on board, along with John Spears, probably the most prolific drivers in the Silverstone Festival. Yep. I think, what did we say yesterday? Nigel's doing 7 races in 6.
So 7 cars in 6 races, because they shared a pair of cars. Each of them started one in one of the races yesterday afternoon and finished in the other, in a pair of Listers, a Lister Nobly and a Lister Costin. And in all the other races, they're sharing one each. But in fact, of course, John winning yesterday without the help of Nigel in his Maserati 250F. So Nigel's racing 7 cars in 6 races. John is racing 8 cars in 7 races and has won once already. So he's going to come away with at least one winner's garland from here. And Nigel has yet to have one. Oh, hang on, did they win in the Lister?
They didn't switch drivers, did they?
That's right, he stayed in. So
he won.
Yeah, so he did win. So he's had a win on his own, and so has John. So it's even Stevens. Oh, there's the modern stopwatch on the iPhone. Means you can do other things, because your average stopwatch won't take pictures or make phone calls or send WhatsApp messages. So the Pearson's Jag still leads from the Minshaw Jag, and then Richard Cook's Cobra. And even if you're driving on your own, you do have to stop, and you have to spend the same amount of time stationary. So it's not, I'm driving on my own, I don't have to make a pit stop. Yes, you flipping well do. That's the regs. So even if you are driving on, of course, you can time it when you want to. And if you're stuck behind somebody and can't get by, you might dive into the pits earlier. But if you've got clear track in front of you, you might capitalise it for as long as you can, like the leader is. And then, because you know when you make your pit stop, you're more likely to drop back or come back on track in traffic somewhere. So if the track's clear in front of you, then make hay while the sun shines. Go as quick as you can for as long as you can, and then before you hit traffic or before the pit window closes, more cogently, then you make your pit stop. But you've got to try and keep your speed up for as long as possible.
And as we approach halfway through the race, 25 minutes, this is the point at which owner drivers can hop out. So after 25 minutes, they can come get out of the car. But equally, if the non-owner, and that's certainly true of Jason Minshaw in the number 55 car, that's owned by Martin Melling, he will have to get out of that car before the 25 minutes is up to give Martin the chance to do more than 50% of the race.
Which of the Pearsons is the owner of this Jag?
Well, it's probably owned by Pearson's Engineering. Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's personal to one of the Pearsons, but it's difficult to tell with John is slightly, and I'm really cautiously saying slightly slower than Gary, but they are so evenly matched. Whoever owns the car needs to hand over, but the lap times won't change much.
Fastest race lap, by the way, has just been set. A 2-minute 30.149. Only one car has lapped in the 30s, and it is car number 300, Nigel Greensall. He's just set the fastest race lap, and who was that going off? That's the 55 E-Type. So that is Jason Minshaw. Having done all that hard work to get by Jack, he then chucked it in the kitty litter. So he has dropped back behind Jack Minshaw and into third place, and in has come the silver Healy that was in front of our race leader. So Gary Pearson continues with a clear road in front. In fact, he hasn't seen anybody for a while, has he? Nobody in his mirrors, nobody in front. Did they stop the race? Have I missed the checkered flag or something?
And Nigel Greensall hopped into number 300 and immediately purple.
Yep.
He's got the fastest lap of the race.
And in fact, another new fastest lap. It was a 2-minute 30.1. It's now a 2:29.8. The next quickest lap set by anybody is Gary Pearson's 2:31.4. So that Cobra, that was our second place car early on, is going very quickly indeed. 2:30.7 is the best lap. Gregor Fiskin and Chris Ward's car. Chris Ward just set that a lap ago. So 2:30.7 compared to 2:29.8. And don't forget, Fiskin was ahead of Spears early on. And so Nigel Greensall has a bit of catching up to do. 177, the classic factory Healy colours, classic BMC colours, tartan red and Old English white. And behind comes our race leader. So this is Chris Ward, or the man who will be race leader when it all sorts itself out, unless this man gets to him, 300. So coming down towards you at the Beckett Sesses and on the Hanger Straight and at Stowe is the battle for what will be the lead. It's still the two Cobras, the red Cobra 68 with the white roof and the all red Cobra 300. And Greensall was lapping about a second a lap quicker, coming up behind two Moonstone Blue Healys. A brace in identical livery, the pale blue with the white roof. And again, more traffic in front of Chris Ward. Nigel Greensall splits the difference between the two Healys as he comes down the Hanger Straight. He's got another 1700cc on them, so he's got plenty of extra poke in the Cobra. 4.7 litre, 289. And busy hands as ever. Nigel Greensall always has a 4.2 litre, beg pardon. Nigel Greensall always has the car up on its toes. So at the moment is E-Type's first, second and third and fourth, but the Pearsons are in. So race leader, car number 23, the white E-Type with the black roof, comes into the pit lane. It's going to be interesting to see where they come out. As he came in, Gary Pearson was 14.5 seconds ahead of Jack Minshaw, who was 2.5 ahead of Jason Minshaw after Jason's spin. They've all come in, so the pit stop window is not long to remain open. Now we are going to see a driver change. Not the easiest thing in an E-Type, would be an awful lot easier were the roof down. But even with those 3 over-centre clips, that takes a bit of time to clip back on as well. So Gary handing over to John Pearson. There was a driver change there as well, blowing cooling air through the radiator ducts. Great attention to detail. That wouldn't have happened in period. And here is our race leader. This is, or the man who will be, no, I beg your pardon, this is Nigel Greensall, isn't it, not Chris Ward. So Nigel Greensall behind another of the Healys. 177, Bruce Montgomery driving on his own in his 1961 Healy 3000. He pulls into the pit lane just as Nigel gets by him, and is basically the length of the old pit straight between them. Into Copse Corner turns Chris Ward, into Copse Corner now turns Nigel Greensall. And Chris Ward's last lap, a 2-minute 30.5. Nigel's a 2-minute 29.5. The gap is down to 3.5 seconds between them. This will be the battle for the lead. And almost everybody has stopped. The Peterkin Blakeney Edwards E-Type still out front. Car number 11, that's yet to stop. That's the green car started by Mike Grant Peterkin. Pat Blakeney Edwards will be waiting in the pit lane, and the gap is coming down. 21 minutes, 3.5 seconds. Those are the maths. And Chris Ward, new to this car, needs to find a little bit more pace if he's going to hold off Nigel Greensall. If there was 5 minutes and 3 seconds, it would be an awful lot easier task. But Alistair Douglas, 21 minutes or 20 minutes or so, that's going to give them what, another 7 or 8 laps probably, and Nigel is closing it at a second a lap, so he will be with him with plenty of time to try and get by.
Yeah, Chris Ward, though, a very, very experienced driver. I think Patrick Blakeney-Edwards described him as one of the best historic race drivers, and that's certainly true. He's very good indeed, as is Nigel Greensall, of course. So we've got two really top drivers here in these historic cars who know how to get the most out of them, just make sure the brakes stay working, and also keep the tyres in the car, as Chris Ward sets the fastest lap of the race with a 2:29.3, and our final pit caller has come in. I think, no, we've got one more to go, but the leading car number 11, which took over the lead, has come into the pits. So that's to hand over to Patrick Blakeney-Edwards.
Only Duncan Wiltshire and Amanda Stretton have yet to swap seats. Not sure who started that one, actually. But there is Pat Blakeney-Edwards getting into the classic E-Type Jag with that fabulous dashboard in front. There's nothing not to like about an E-Type, particularly a fixed head coupe. I think we're in synchronicity there. That's the shape I like most, and I think you agree on that. But there's no E-Type that I think, oh no, I'd never give that house room. I'd definitely own any E-Type.
And it's Freddie Wiltshire, actually, Duncan's son, who is sharing with Amanda Stretton, and it was Freddie that started. That's car number 25, the Triumph TR4.
And with a proud historic racing heritage. Her dad was a historic racer as well, had a P3 Alpha, which he used to race here at Silverstone when I was first starting watching. And he used to tow his caravan here and remove the spare tyres from the A-frame bracket with the tow hook, but didn't take the tow bar off. So he used to race his Grand Prix Alpha, having towed his caravan here with the tow bar and the spare wheel frame still on the back of the car. And where once it might have been Alfa Romeo Racing Red, it had so much castor oil in the paint, it was almost black. So yeah, that was my kind of early indication of what proper historic racing was all about, and it's got the same kind of feel here. Nigel with the front wheel dangling in the air as these cars, firm front, soft rear, that's what you want in an old-fashioned front-wheel drive, front-engine rear-wheel drive car, and this TR4 will be just the same.
It's Freddie Wiltshire handing over to Amanda Stretton, the last car that was due into the pits.
Go on then, Spangley. Proud owner of a Fiat 500, not a modern one, a historic one. Loves her old cars, loves her modern cars. And an early TR4, the pre-IRS TR4A model, and on a Coventry reg as well, so appropriate as well. Standard Triumph also built in Coventry.
The two leading Cobras now trading fastest laps. It was Chris Ward who set a 2:29.3, and now Nigel Greensall has set a 2:29.1, and the gap between them 2.2 seconds. It's very clear on screen if you're watching the live stream, either on one of our big screens or at home. It's very clear that the all-red Cobra is closing in, but only 17 minutes remaining. And well, that's perfect, isn't it? Nigel Greensall, we can see through the side of the car, working away at the steering wheel, soaring at the steering wheel, trying to keep the car pointing in approximately the direction he wants it to go. And if it's not quite where he wants it, he just puts a bit more power on.
Well, he was great in qualifying. We spoke to him and he said, well, this is a strange thing. It's got what's known as a steering box. And he said, I think what that means is that you put steering in, and at some stage the box puts steering out, but it's not necessarily in direct relationship to what you put in. So it's a sort of, he sees it as a randomizer. He said, you'll put a bit of steering in, and then eventually the car will see and go, oh no, much too much, and you'll try and take some off, and eventually the car will respond. But as you said, trading fastest laps, and I think some of that has been affected by where they've caught traffic, because they are very close in terms of pace. But Nigel was 1.4 seconds quicker on the last lap, and that's what sized the gap. It was 2.2, it is no longer 2.2 seconds. It is more like a second and a half. And the last 16, 17 minutes of this race are going to be very good fun for them. 61, we're looking at the big Heeley of Doug Muirhead and Jeremy Welch. Jeremy Welch, another ace Heeley preparation expert, who's spent a lot of his life working on big Heelys.
That one looks like it's done a lot of events. And there's Martin Melling in his own car, the number 55 E-Type that was a front runner towards the beginning of the race. Third place is still John Pearson, took over from brother Gary a couple of laps ago, car number 23. And then it's the number 59, Richard Cook, Cobra. So Cobra's 1, 2 and 4.
And there is the Turner, only one of those in the field. Looks not unlike an early MG Midget Austin Healey Sprite, but built by Turner.
Jan Magnussen in that now.
Jan Magnussen is driving that, indeed, the Super Dane. Didn't get a chance to qualify it. It sort of decided to stop a little bit early in proceedings, so I'm not sure how many miles he's actually done in the Turner. This might be his total driving experience of the car, as far as we're aware. Nigel Grinsell, by the way, last time round, 2:29.0 compared to 2:30.8, so found another 1.8 seconds on Chris Ward. The car's owner, Morten, I'm going to say Morten Mortensen, I don't mean that, I mean Nikolai Mortensen. The car stopped just outside the wing, and he was under the bonnet trying to get it to go again. I don't think it wanted to. Meanwhile, back with our leaders, Grinsell now right with Ward. This is first and second. Nigel Grinsell catching with a big head of steam. And in historic racing, as in modern racing, if you're coming fast, you need to get by, otherwise you'll be slowed down to the speed of the car in front, and in equal machinery, and they are pretty equal, it's going to be hard to make a difference. The problem is, Chris Ward knows what he's about, and so does Nigel. You can see Nigel looking to the inside there, into the beginning of the Beckett's S's. That's not happening, so now he's got to keep the pressure on, try and force a mistake out of Chris Ward, out of the Chapel Curve, onto the Hanger Straight. He'll be in the tow, and boy, does a Cobra need an aerodynamic aid or two, because these things are fairly bluff, upright cars. Can't make it through. The body's originally built at AC Cars in Thames Ditton. It was the 6-cylinder Bristol-engined AC Ace. And then, when Carroll Shelby decided to shoehorn in a big Ford V8, it took on a whole new life, the evil twin, if you like. And now trouble for Chris Ward. They're catching the pretty little Sunbeam Alpine. He's trying to tighten the line and get on the gas. Managed to hold the slide. Grinsell squeezes through as well. Poor Alpine driver can do nothing but run out wide and follow his own line as they get through. 13 minutes to go. Nigel Grinsell is there with Chris Ward. But is he going to be able to get by? This should be an epic finish to the race.
Yes, despite that lap previously from Nigel Grinsell, close on 1.5 seconds lap, it's able to close in, but now Chris Ward is positioning his Cobra in exactly the right place to avoid a chance of Nigel Grinsell slipping through. Chris Ward hitting every apex, a little bit wide there on the Aintree onto the Wellington Straight. Maybe half a chance now for Nigel Grinsell as they go down into Brooklands. Will Nigel dive out? Yes, he does. Dives out on the brakes, goes to the inside. That doesn't mean he'll get the place, though, because Chris Ward now has the inside for Luffield, and that's exactly what happens. Chris Ward stays on that inside line, gets back into the lead as they go through Luffield. Now Nigel Grinsell has to do it all over again on the run down to Cops Corner.
Titanic battle for the lead here in the BRD, in the historic Tourist Trophy for the Royal Automobile Club. And Nigel Grinsell and race leader Chris Ward in their pair of red Cobras at it hammer and tongs. Not sure how many times Chris Ward and Nigel Grinsell have raced each other, but they recognise a well-driven car when they see one. Some great respect between the two. An absolutely full tilt, right on the limit of adhesion, and yet as clean as a whisker, giving each other survival room. If they try and make a move, they will try and make it cleanly, because neither of them want to damage the cars that they have been asked to drive. Here they come, traffic in front, the White Lotus Elite, the dark E-Type, Chris Ward looked to go around the outside onto the racing line into Stowe. Here's a chance for Greensall. Chris Ward offline as he gets onto the brakes, and Greensall can tighten the line on the exit. He's going to try and drive his way through into the lead, into the Vale. They're side by side. Greensall gets his nose in front for the first time, turns in at the exit of the Vale, and Chris Ward just couldn't hold the speed. And that might be the decisive move. Chris Ward's car seems to be sliding around a lot more than Nigel Greensall's, and whether that's the newness of the car or new to the team and maybe not as sharp a setup or not, hard to tell, but Nigel Greensall has grabbed the lead with 10 minutes to go.
This is wonderful, wonderful racing from these two drivers in cars that they've been asked, as you mentioned, asked to drive, but they're showing such respect to the cars, the owners, and of course all the other racing drivers out there, giving them room. They're not just barging their way through, and in fact it was Chris Ward's move on a slower car that lost him the lead effectively, because he couldn't get round the outside on the racing line. And Chris getting wider and wider, isn't he? I wonder whether he just has a slight handling issue now. Perhaps the tyres starting to go off a little bit.
I'm sure that the big power of the Cobras and the sideways motoring is affecting the tyres. They go by the Keith Lucas family XK150 Jag, but Nigel got through cleanly. Chris Ward is still with him. Nigel's last lap, 2 minute 28.7. with a 2 minute 30.5 for Chris Ward. So as the Jag uses a little bit of Herbert's Trench on the exit of Luffield, Nigel Greensall is starting potentially just to creep away a little, but it only needs one false move in traffic and suddenly Chris Ward will be on him.
And through Copse they go. Chris a little bit wide again, working away hard at the wheel as they come up on a Lotus Elite in classic green and yellow striped colours of the Lotus team. And through Beckett's they go. Now this is probably going to advantage Chris, because Nigel is slightly held up behind the Elite. The Elite, just how quick the Elite is through the corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tiny little engine. It's less than a quarter of the size of the Cobra, but was quicker through the Beckett's S's. Yeah. Now out onto the Hangar Straight.
Carl Tilley in the Lotus, 1220 cc, so giving away 3 whole litres of capacity to the Cobras, and yet just whistled away from the superbly driven car of Nigel Greensall in the twisty stuff. Of course, on the wide open expanses of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, there ain't no substitute for cubes, but yeah, Chris Ward has run out of tyre, and the problem is with these treaded historic racing tyres, the more he slides, because the tyres are overheating, the more the tyres are overheating, so the more he slides, so the more the tyres are overheating. It is a vicious spiral, and unfortunately, to try and keep the pace up, he can't keep the car straight. It will get more and more sideways. Vigorously waved yellows. Somebody has gone off in front. And have they recovered? Looks as though they might have. No, yellow flags are still out. Okay, so that's one of our Healey's.
Looks like a mechanical failure.
Yeah,
for the Healey,
being pushed away by the marshals, so it hasn't lost a wheel at least, unlike the Morley's Bentley there. So it looks like it's just come to a grinding halt, a little bit in harm's way. There it is, car number 3, and that is the car of Robert Jennings and Henry Chart, who was so impressive until his 1600 Motors Formula 2 car probably lapsed onto 3, I would think. But that 1959 Mark 1 Healey 3000 just being pushed away. Imagine Henry Chart's probably in the car at the moment, because having finished the Formula 2 race, it was probably always down to Robert Jennings to start it. So Henry's had a second car pack up in him in 2 consecutive races.
A great ruck of traffic now for the leaders to try and make their way through. Is this a chance for Chris Ward to close in on Nigel Greensall? Both of them will be very, very good at getting through traffic. They'll be planning the move through the slower cars, probably 2 or 3 corners ahead, looking for an opportunity to get by with the least time lost. And there, Chris Ward taking a slightly different line into Beckett's, but once he's past the Austin Healey, straight back on the racing line again. But look at all these cars that they're catching up. There's the E-Type, number 7 E-Type of Richard Mines just ahead of them.
And here come our leaders in the red Cobras. You're absolutely right, absolutely massive ruck of cars. Big Healy going by Lotus, and the Cobra going by that. Aston Martin, DB4, Zagato behind, not DB4 GT, not quite able to keep up the pace of the little nimble Lotus in front of it either, despite all of its horsepower advantage. And catching another of the big Healys. Comes our race leader, Nigel Greensill. And of course, the more you race, whatever it is that you're racing, the better you are in traffic, the more experience you've got. And Nigel, racing almost every weekend across the world in a variety of different cars, certainly has plenty of that. Chris Ward, perhaps not quite ring rusty, but maybe not with as many miles under his belt this season as Nigel has. He goes by the Sebring Sprite, so does a big Healy, and Chris Ward catching that clump of traffic just when there is nowhere to go through, and he's still stuck behind them. That traffic fell very well for Nigel Greensill. That was luck rather than judgment, but he still picked his way through them in the right place. If he'd hesitated, he too would have been lost, and Chris Ward would have been all over him. But that is going to open up the margin. It was 1.8 seconds, and Chris Ward is still not past that Healy. Here comes the Turner with the TR4 behind. Turner has moved up a spot. That is our husband and wife combination. Oh no, beg your pardon, the Turners, not Nikolai Mortensen and Jan Magnussen.
It's the Dane train.
I'd like to see Jan Magnussen in a Cobra.
Well, that's
trying to think now whether he's raced one in the revival at Goodwood. He's had a few revival outings.
Remarkably, the pairing of Mortensen and Magnussen have got that up to 11th place.
Wow.
A Turner GT should not be in the top 11 of a big banger race like this at Silverstone, but good driving from these two, and they'd had hardly any qualifying time because the Mortensen actually broke at the very beginning. Into the pits comes Nigel Greensill. So a problem, a technical issue for the red Cobra number 300 team walking towards the car.
Well, that's a real shame for the end of the race. That means that Chris Ward inherits the lead, and he has 45 seconds over the Pearson's E-Type. Well, Nigel debriefing, but something fairly fundamental. You're absolutely right, by the way, about the Turner. Currently in, what did we say, was 11th, now going to be 10th. And that car started just 26th in our field of 35 cars. Now, of course, if Jan Magnussen had a chance to qualify, and if in fact they'd had more than a couple of laps, it might have qualified a little higher, but nevertheless, having a great race. And again, it is only a 1400cc car, so it's not exactly matching on a par with the E-Types, the big Healys, and everything else around it. But here is our race leader then, Chris Ward. The car started by Gregor Fiskin, the car that started on the outside of the front row of the grid. John Spears and Nigel Greensill's tilt for victory in the 300 Cobra has, I'm afraid, come to naught. There's Nigel's partner offering him a little bit of commiseratory hug. You can see how lovely and sunny it is here at Silverstone in mid-August. She's got a hood up on her parka. So, there you go. Sometimes you win, in Nigel's case, quite frequently, but such too is motor racing, sometimes you don't. He's recently bought a Radical, which he's using for training drivers at high speed. So it's not just about helping drivers and owners get quicker in their own race cars, using that as a race tool as well for driver tuition. It's one of the ways that drivers have a long and storied career in racing cars, either in modern or in historic racing, is by encouraging owner drivers to, who are already partaking, but by encouraging them and helping them get quicker and quicker.
And we've got a good battle for second place, which we'll try and pick up on our screens for you, with the John Pearson car now only a second across the line last time, but they're further round the lap now, so it could even have closed because the last lap for Richard Cook was considerably quicker than John Pearson. Yeah,
so you're looking for the white E-Type with the black roof, chasing down, I beg your pardon, the white Cobra with the black roof, chasing down the white E-Type. So 23 is John Pearson and 59 the white Cobra of Richard Cook. Well, 1:19 on the clock. This is going to be close-ish, but we should get one more out of this. Cut 7 coming down towards us. That's Richard Mines' grey E-Type with the blue nose. That car no longer carrying the Cut 7 registration. It's a car that has carried that number in the past. As we spoke about in qualifying, Cut 7, it's a number plate. It moved with the owner from car to car, so there are several Cut 7s, and it's not been unknown for more than one Cut 7 to appear in a single race. Seen that a couple of times at Goodwood, but there is Richard Mines. And here is our battle for second place. The two white cars now on the hanger straight. The white E with the black roof and the white Cobra with the black roof. John Pearson ahead of Richard Cook. And this will be the last lap for the leader. Chris Ward crosses the line with just under a quarter of a minute to go. Over a quarter of a minute to go. So these guys have one more lap. And as you said, Richard Cook reeling in John Pearson. 2:32.6 last time round to 2:34.5 of the E-Type. So the Cobra very nearly 2 seconds quicker on the last lap. And the gap has come down from a second to about just 9/10 of a second. I was going to say a little over half of that, but he's in striking distance. And again, it does depend where the E-Type and the Cobra catch the traffic, Alistair Douglas, as to who's going to come out on top of this.
Very much so, yes, and it's E-Type on E-Type being lapped, but the number 18 E-Type, the hard top there, you can see keeping well out of the way, and actually that's advantage John Pearson. Richard Cook goes through on the inside. We've got well, that's one of our Healys.
Healy stopped just
earlier,
in front, just at the halfway down the hanger straight, in fact. It's not on the Wellington straight, is it? Or is it on the Wellington straight? No, there's no yellow flags there, so it's clean to go. They go by the E-Type of John Clark. They go by the Triumph TR4 as well. That's the Freddie Wiltshire and Amanda Stretton car. She stays on the racing line. She doesn't know if they're the leaders, but she knows they're coming quick.
And that's a place change for second overall on the very last lap of the race, with Richard Cook going through, unless John Pearson can get back at him on the run to Copse, perhaps.
And again, Richard Cook with the same tyre issues that we saw from Chris Ward in the red Cobra. He's used them all up, or they have, he's used them all up himself, so he's only got himself to blame. And John and Gary Pearson's E-Type now in third place. There is the race leader. Go ahead of me, go ahead of me. Okay, not quite sure why Chris Ward is waving everybody by. Maybe because he doesn't necessarily have to pass them, but I would have thought with the speed on the hanger straight that the Cobra has, he would have wanted to. Whatever, the checker flag awaits. Time has run out. Started by Gregor Fiskin from the outside of the front row of the grid. Chris Ward took the car over in the lead, and having lost the lead to Nigel Greensall, brings it back to take victory. It is a Cobra that wins. Cobra's dominated qualifying at 1-2, and it is a Cobra victory, and it will be very likely Cobra 1-2 in the race, because there is Richard Cook. He started in 5th place after qualifying in the white Cobra with the black hardtop. But Richard Cook, having passed the Pearson's Jag on the final lap, will complete that lap in 2nd place. The Pearsons qualified in 4th, just ahead of the Cobra. But that last lap pass, Richard Cook had just enough tyre left to get it done. And he takes 2nd, ahead of the E-Type in 3rd. So that is your podium. Gregor Fistin, Chris Ward, Richard Cook, and then Gary and John Pearson. Gary and John, there you are. Applause from the two drivers to each other. A big congratulatory round of applause from Gary Pearson there to Richard Cook for a clean pass, well made. And this is the 5th place car of John Spooner. Because the Minshaw's E-Type came across the road in front of 7-11, and then the Peterkin Blakeney Edwards car in 6th position. So Howard Spooner, where's my head this morning? Race winner is Chris Ward. The car started by Gregor Fiskin. Richard Cook finishing in 2nd. Gary and John Pearson 3rd. all Minshaw E-Type. Jack and Guy finishing in 4th, ahead of Howard Spooner. And let's catch up with Bryn Lucas. He is down with our long-time leader, Nigel Greensell. Let's see what happened to the 300 Cobra.
Well, Nigel, it's a shame to see you in the pits here. What can you tell us? What's happened?
Oh, unfortunately, we just lost fuel pressure, so that was it. You know, it just conked out. So, but what a great race up to that point! It was fantastic. Great dicing with Chris. You know, it's always great when you're dicing with a friend out on the track and having lots of fun. And John had driven a brilliant stint early on, dicing with Gregor, and I think was it John Pearson that was in the E-Type, or Gary, probably Gary. So yeah, we've had a fantastic race. You know, it's been brilliant. But unfortunate for the guys, they worked so hard, and the car was fantastic, as you could see.
It looked amazing out there. Some drifting for us too. Well done. It's a shame you didn't make it to the end.
Another day, but we're having fun. Thank you.
Well, there you go. It's not always your day. Lurking in the background there, ARM, Andrew Marriott, who has been patrolling the pit lane here at Silverstone since long before it looked like that. But there is Chris Ward on the podium in the Formula 2, in the 500, and again at the top step of the podium here. So again, one of the most experienced historic race drivers, gun for hire in the business, and did a cracking job holding off Nigel Greensell. And, you know, as ever, ebullient after a race like that, Nigel. I'm sure Chris Ward will be just as bubbling over with excitement. I don't think you can be bored driving a Cobra. Let's hear from him and Bryn Lucas.
Well, Chris, you've done it again. It's great to see you out here. A great performance as well. Maybe the gods were shining down on you as well, particularly with the retirement earlier on.
Yeah, for sure. It was exciting to start with, but Nigel, to be fair, had the better of us. I was tended to sort of start to overdrive a little bit and got a little bit too much heat into the tyre, so the car was slip sliding about. But first time the car's out, all credit to Richard and RW Racing Service. It's never been on track before today, apart from a test day. So straight out of the box, really good. But really unfortunate that Nigel had his problem. It would have been nice to try and tag on to the back. I think that's the best I could have hoped for. But what a great result for the team, for the car, and for Gregor as well, who owns the car.
It certainly is. Gregor, come in. Let's have a word with you as well, because you must be pleased with your performance as well, because it was...
Well, Chris's performance, really. But Chris and Nigel, great TV, really close racing. First time out in the car, you know, you did a great job out there.
Great, thank you very much.
Really good job.
Top step, well done.
Thank you very much. Oh, your arms.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not forearm pump from motocross, but bicep pump from AC Cobra Racing. Well, Gregor Fiskin always underplays his part in the pudding, but he did absolutely as well in his stint as Chris Ward did in his. Richard Cook took second, so it's a Cobra 1-2 with the Pearson family E-Type in third, ahead of the Minshaw family E-Type, the E-Type of Howard Spooner, the Peterkin Blakeney Edwards E-Type, and then the Austin Healeys ahead of the Morton and Magnuson Turner, which finished in 9th place, having got ahead of Bruce Montgomery's Big Healey. Well, that's a car that we'll have to look out for if Nikolai Mortensen brings it back next year with Jan Magnussen in. That's going to be a highly entertaining car, and I'm sure he would love to get an entry as well for the revival at Goodwood. That car going really well. Richard Mines in his familiar E-Type Jag, and Carl Tilley we saw in his Lotus Elite in a little clump of Lotuses. All going well here, but giving away so much capacity to the big cars. A couple of cars not quite making it through to the end of the race.